Arizona's number one after all, and history strongly suggests the Wildcats are one of 12 possible champions this season.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network around. I'm your host, Leif Thulin, your resident college basketball guru, stats nerd, point guard by game, and ball knower by trade. And I'm excited to talk Arizona hoops with you today and a little bit of football as well. Today on the show, I'm going to discuss the importance of being number one. Is there importance? And why is it important, if so? The historical data that strongly supports Arizona's chances to win it all. Plus, I'll analyze the rest of the non-conference slate and give the latest recruiting updates for the Wildcats, both on the gridiron and on the hardwood. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Arizona is number one in the AP poll and number two in the coaches poll. What are the coaches missing? What more can the Wildcats do? And no, they have Michigan, who's done plenty as well. I say that in jest, but Arizona's number one in the AP poll. And now the question really is, does it matter? And I know some of you guys in the comments have been saying, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, why are you touting that Arizona should be number one in the past weeks? Because, like, what's the difference between 1 and 2? I don't think it really matters in terms of having it right now. If you're able to hold it for a while, it does. But what does matter is accumulating the wins that they've accumulated so far to further bolster their schedule when they enter the loaded Big 12. Because barring some miraculous season, it'll be very, very hard to avoid losses in the Big 12. And there's going to be losses that we don't foresee because the home courts in the Big 12 are very formidable. And even the bottom of the Big 12 is solid. Arizona, on the flip side of that, will have chances to win enough games that matter. And that is no matter what happens this season, Arizona will have wins that really matter because they play good teams. But the wins already against 4 ranked opponents, including 3 preseason top 12 teams, will certainly hold weight because they've done that already. And those are guaranteed quad 1 wins. And they're going to have guaranteed quad 1 wins they'll accumulate in conference play by virtue of just playing in the Big 12 and holding serve on their home court. And of course, I think they're going to win road games in the Big 12 too, because I think Arizona's that good. So to do this in non-conference, and also having the chance to gain good wins and not only bad losses, which is a issue for the teams in less good conferences. Like the Big 12 doesn't have many bad losses to accumulate. There are a few, but there are other conferences where if you don't schedule like Arizona did and you win, but then you go and play a game that you should win in non-conference, but it's not a marquee game and you lose, that weighs a lot. And then you go into conference play and you lose against a team in your conference that's not particularly good, that hurts you. Arizona doesn't have many of those games, and they've started off winning big games. They've done the exact opposite of teams that have built strong schedules. Like, for instance, Florida last year played no one in non-conference. They ended up winning the national championship, but there were so many questions about how good they were coming out of non-conference because they started off 10-0, 11-0 without playing anyone. Arizona has only done anything to help them. If they lose to Alabama, it does not hurt. If they beat Alabama, they have 5 top 20 preseason wins in terms of where they were ranked ahead. And 4 of those would be top 12. And no one's even close to that. No one's even remotely close to that. And Arizona will have at least 10 quad 1 opportunities in Big 12 play. Like, think about that. That's why it matters to have these wins. And the number 1 overall right now doesn't matter, but a 1 seed does. And getting number 1 now is a testament to the resume they've built. So it's all a process to getting number 1 seed by having the number 1 ranking right now. And honestly, who am I kidding? The number 1 does matter because it shows representation for years to come of what was a good team. Like, you lost in history, Arizona was the number 1 team in the country. That's a cool fact. That matters. And they could have a year where they run away with it. Like, everyone remembers 2014 fondly for this team was undefeated prior to an injury. And they were number 1. Like, that is something that people talk about. And the other thing is, it's a recruiting pitch for years to come. Players can look and say, wow, like this team's number one. It draws eyes of the public. It draws the attention of fans that are not as diehard. It recruits certainly take note of it. And money from donors and other posterity reasons is why the number one ranking does matter and why I'm pleased to see Arizona at number one. For posterity's sake, for those of you who really want to know the stats, Arizona, this is their 40th week at number one in the AP poll. Arizona is now 9th among all programs for weeks ranked number one in the AP, and that is establishing a blue blood pitch, right? Like you can say, you know what, of our college basketball program, we are a top 10 by being the best team in the country this amount of weeks. And that is something you could say because Tommy Lloyd, it's his third time cracking that spot. And that is a recruiting weapon that he has that few others do. And that's in 5 years. And I don't think it really matters to me number one right now, but that makes it possible. If you're number one now with the wins they've accumulated, it makes it very possible come Selection Sunday that they're a number one seed because most teams don't have the non-conference to bolster what they do in conference play. So here's the historical number that bodes very well for Arizona. Since 2003, 2004, the Week 6 top 12, the Week 6 AP poll and the top 12 has featured the national champion. So let me repeat that. The top 12 of the Week 6 AP poll has included the national champion winner for 21 years in a row. And Arizona's number one, and 5 of the teams from the 2004 start of this have been ranked number one that have gone on to win it. So Arizona, actually 4 of them, and Arizona would be the 5th if they were to win it. And additionally, every team that was top 20 in Bart Torvik and Torvik, a couple of their more advanced analytical queries, at this time last year, all top 20s received a top 5 seed or better in the dance, meaning that the 20 best teams then ended up being the 20 best teams according to the selection committee. So being well represented right now does translate to postseason success, but also a metric to take note of in terms of what Selection Sunday says about your team. And Arizona being number one right now really does matter. So this is a great metric to indicate being a legitimate team. 20 plus years of data suggest Arizona has a great shot. However, I dug out this tidbit for the naysayers who say, oh, we can't win because Tommy Lloyd hasn't gotten past the Sweet 16. 20 of the last 23 champions had a coach that previously had gone to the Elite Eight, and which Arizona doesn't meet the criteria of, having lost in the Sweet 16 a few times with Tommy Lloyd. The 3 exceptions being Danny Hurley at UConn in 2023, Kevin Ollie at UConn in 2014 when they won as a 7 seed, and then Todd Golden at Florida last year. So I think only 8 teams can win it all. I said that last week, and I ranked them out. One of them I did not include was Iowa State. I may have to bite my words on that. I really like what they've got. I do think they're set to taper off because they cannot possibly shoot at the rate they're shooting, but their defense is legit, and they have one of the best trios, if not the best trio, in all of college basketball. But Arizona, Michigan, Duke, and Iowa State, and I'd include UConn as well, look the 5 best to me. And I'll be curious to see what teams continue to grow and which teams stagnate. And I'll tell you what impressed me the most for Arizona was the growth of the young guys. It was tangible. It was easily observed. And the confidence leap of Braden Burries and Ivan Karchenkov stood out even among the dominant performance of Koa Peak going 8 of 11. It stood out above Jaden Bradley's easily scoring points. It stood out above Tobe Awaka and Mo Krivas dominating the interior. What stood out the most to me was Burries and Karchenkov looking the part of talented freshmen that are growing in their roles, but also growing in confidence. And that, I think, makes Arizona even more dangerous going forward and unlikely to stagnate. And then, need I mention it again, the defense is ironclad. They are locked down. Coming up next on Locked On Wildcats, we're going to discuss the rest of the non-conference slate, along with both basketball and football recruiting check-ins, with a few tidbits that you guys may not know unless you really dive deep into the college basketball recruiting scene. So all that and more ahead on Locked On Wildcats. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, and Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to the door. And this week, it's the best time to jump in because the cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. The quality is exactly what you hope for: incredibly tender steaks, rich flavor, and meals that make hosting or just weeknight cooking easier. And the variety is underrated. Of course, the steaks are fantastic, but there's burgers, comfort meals, sides, desserts. It's something that fits for truly anyone. And save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select fares during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply, and see site for details. Thank you for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team, and every day you listen. So now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Wildcats with no interruptions, members only, Discord access, and more. All for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to https://lockedonwildcats.supercast.com or check the link below in the show notes, which I'll attach to learn more. It's an awesome deal, and you'll get exclusive access that only you can get right there. So Arizona is one of just 8 undefeated teams, and they have a massive test against Alabama coming up. Pretty good for a team that was picked to go 9-4 in conference play by many fans, by many metrics, Bart Torvik, by Ken Palm. The highest I really saw Arizona was going 3-3 of their big tests in non-conference play, and they were going to go 10-3 in that case. So the question shifted, right? The goalposts have moved. How long can Arizona go undefeated is more of a more appropriate question. I want to be clear that that's an unreasonable expectation for them to stay undefeated for a long, long time. And I know I talked about undefeated non-conference. I think they'll start 7-0 in conference play, but it's an unattainable expectation because due to the conference that is the Big 12, it's a monster, and the non-conference to this juncture has been an unreal task to get to 8-0, and it's going to get harder to get to 9-0 playing Alabama, who I think to this point is the second biggest test. The first was UConn, and the second is Alabama. I was pretty clear about that before the season. That's how I would rank it out. Again, UConn, Alabama, and then I probably would have said Florida. And Florida's worse than I thought, but I was lower on Florida. But my point being is Alabama was always going to be a test. Arizona's got Alabama in their next game. So staying undefeated is going to be quite a test. But to be undefeated after 8 games in which the record was projected to be 5-3 or 6-2 is a big thing. Like shifting the goalpost to, hey, instead of being 9-4, 10-3, you can be 13-0 at the end of non-conference play heading into the Big 12 really is a huge step, because that was a bit of pessimism from the fan base that I noticed when I hopped onto this scene talking, but also pessimism from the analytics folks and pessimism from the rankings that said Arizona was supposed to be the fourth best team of 6 really good Big 12 teams. So like I said, unreasonable expectation to stay undefeated. And how long? It's not like you're playing the WCC where Gonzaga had chances to do so. Alabama that's not being played in Tuscaloosa. They're playing Alabama in Birmingham, and then Abilene Christian, and then San Diego State, who's been good, but not as good as some of their recent teams. And then that one's played in Phoenix, not inside McHale. And then there's Bethune-Cookman and South Dakota State to finish it out. So there's 5 more games, and I see 4-1 at least. Like I feel very, very confident that Arizona will at least accumulate 4 wins in that. And I really want to paint the picture of the preseason non-conference that was, the talk that I noticed externally hopping into this light of covering Arizona was this is an inexperienced team reliant on freshmen. There were doubts about Mo Krivas and his health, but also how tough he was, how good he'd be on both sides of the ball. There were many frustrated at the lack of March success, and that wasn't saying that they'd start poorly this year, but there's a little bit of pessimism around the program that I noticed. 13th overall in the AP and 4th in the Big 12. That felt disrespectful for a guy who's won 78% of his games, Tommy Lloyd. But the majority of people said 9-4 or 10-3. And so losing 4 of 6 big matchups was something that people were going to be like, okay, I guess that has to happen. And most thought Florida, UConn, and Bama were losses. And some believed UCLA would be too. Like even some of the guys I've spoken to on here. So think about that just in 8 games, how Arizona has changed the expectation, how they've risen in your minds and propitiated themselves into national championship contenders and the number 1 team in the nation, and see what they've accomplished to this point. That's why being number 1 matters. It's not the title of number 1, but it's making themselves relevant enough for recruits to see, like, this is a championship contender. They play a beautiful brand of basketball. They make other teams wary of how good they are, and people are scared to play Arizona now. And like I said, I want to reiterate, I don't think anything below 12-1 is really possible. I mean, I assume you could in theory lose to Alabama and San Diego State, but I don't think that'll happen. Like, I would say anything below 12-1 in non-conference at this point would be a travesty. And if I had said that before the season, I would have sounded like a nut job. So, long story short, crazy how 8 games can shift a tenor of a season for a fan base and belief levels of an avid fan base that pours in love and support and devotion to their team. Alabama, let's talk about them really quickly. Alabama's tricky, and they're a weird team as a whole. And we'll have a big breakdown coming up. I have a guest coming on to talk about the Crimson Tide, and I'll break down some of their finer details on another episode as well. We'll get a lot of breakdown for the Crimson Tide. But I'll give you a small picture now. The Crimson Tide, according to KenPom, has Arizona beating Alabama by 1 after having the Crimson Tide favored by about 4.5 points before the season. I remember looking at that. So Arizona's shifted that narrative. Arizona will have to limit Alabama's threes and their three-point shooting from being red hot, because they'll shoot them no matter what. And without hesitation, they are far from bashful. But threes are worth more points than twos, is their philosophy. And it's true. So they can beat anyone in the country. But they can also shoot themselves out of a game. And they also shoot a ton of threes. So if that's not going well, and in this case particularly well because of how good Arizona is on the interior, Arizona could win this. Arizona will be playing at Alabama's pace, in my opinion. They will play at light speed and will want to score before Arizona's tremendous half-court defense gets set. Arizona will want to dominate the glass, prevent those fast breaks, and set their interior on defense, but also on offense against a relatively weak, both physically in stature and just defensively. They don't protect the rim very well. The Tide big guys aren't known for shot blocking. The stylistics of this game are more volatile than previous games. I felt the script was pretty clear in a lot of the previous games. Like, Arizona was going to score a lot against Auburn on the interior, and Auburn's best chance was to have both their stars go off. And that game went pretty much how we expected. Arizona scored a lot of points in the paint and dominated with their defense. Alabama's a feast or famine type of team, and right now has the number 2 strength of schedule, playing Purdue, Gonzaga, and Illinois already, and won't be scared to play Arizona. One note here to really drive this in, and I'll dive into it in further detail in episodes to come, is just how diametrically opposed these teams are in their approach to scoring. Arizona scores 60% of their points from 2 and are 355th in percentage of points from 3. 355th. And get this, 363rd in three-pointers attempted per field goal attempts, meaning they shoot very few of them. They actually shoot it very well. Alabama, on the other side, scores 40% of their points from 3 and shoot 53% of their attempts from 3, which is 7th. And they're 36th in percentage of points scored from 3. So these two score completely differently. And the other thing is Alabama doesn't force turnovers at all. So I think that bodes well for Arizona, because turnovers were the only time they looked a little bit vulnerable against Auburn in a game where they won by 29. But when they turned it over, Auburn was able to punish them. Alabama's lightning fast, features a couple of really good guards. It's going to be Arizona's bigs, how much they can impose their will versus how good Alabama's guards are, in my opinion. After that, we're going to skip over some of those bye games. I'm sorry to disrespect them. We'll preview those when they come. But let's talk about San Diego State. That'll be in the Suns Arena as opposed to McHale. This isn't the same San Diego State of a few years ago that made a run to the title game, or the one the year after that went to the Sweet 16. And honestly, I'm not sure they're better than last year's team that Carolina beat by 40 in the first 4. They probably are. KenPom has a respectable ranking of 45th for San Diego State, but my eyes do not like what I've seen from them thus far. And that's not to say that they play ugly ball, as many bemoaned as they made the Final Four. Like, yes, they don't play the most attractive style, especially in those years where they were super good defensively, pounded it inside, didn't shoot a ton. It's more that their pieces that do have talent have yet to click. They're 55th on offense, which is shockingly All right, so that's a normal number, but they're shockingly low on defense, 53rd on defense. They're usually a top 20 defense, and they turn it over a ton, but also force a lot of turnovers. So a little bit different than Alabama. And contrary to your preconceived notions, they actually shoot very well from three. They shoot 40% from three, and that accounts for 32% of their total points, which is pretty solid. So in sum, Alabama and San Diego State are not alike at all, but both present unique challenges for Arizona. And that's a really good finish to non-conference. You're getting two very different teams. And if Arizona can find a way to go undefeated in non-conference, they will have earned it playing all different styles of basketball. My guess is Arizona handles San Diego State by 10 or so in a slightly lower scoring game. It actually, will, to me, will be played in a similar way to what Arizona was able to beat St. Mary's by in the preseason scrimmage. You just got to be able to push away from teams, the pesky opponents that like to change the pace of the game. You got to pull away from them sooner rather than later. And Magoon Gwath is a guy who can protect the rim well. Miles Bird's a crafty guard. Reese Dixon Waters, previously at USC, missed last year for San Diego State. He's back. He can shoot it. And BJ Davis has added some scoring for them as well. So that's not a throwaway game. This is not an obvious one, me saying, oh, they're going to win by 10. But that just speaks how highly I think of the Arizona Wildcats. To stay undefeated against San Diego State, if they can get through Bama, I do think they will do. Now, we'll discuss Bama a lot this week. I've got a guest coming on for Thursday's show. I'll preview all in depth on Friday and probably touch on it again before then even. So next, we're going to discuss the future of Arizona Wildcats athletics and who's going to be heading to Tucson in the recruiting world of football and in basketball after a word from Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and 48 teams will be playing for the first time ever. It's going to be massive, but let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why Game Time, the Game Time app is so clutch, because it's finally giving the fans a real chance and an advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts with when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands, and it makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You can pull up the app, and the layout makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. So you pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for the fine print. And the seat view feature is a game changer. I've used that for tickets before, and you can see exactly what the pitch will look like from your exact seat before you buy. So you can see Cristiano Ronaldo. You can see Lionel Messi from where you sit, and you'll know it, and you can rest assured knowing it. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And again, download the app and make an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go Game Time. Welcome back to Locked On Wildcats. Leif Thulin with you here. Arizona didn't land Cam Williams, the 5-star, to complement Cameron Holmes and trying to land two top 30 guys from the state of Arizona, but the Wildcats are on the prowl. Here's the latest scoop. Arizona is considered to be one of the favorites for Caleb Holt, a 6'5", 2 guard who's top 5 in the nation, a 5-star shooting guard, and that never hurts. I haven't heard anything overwhelmingly positive, but they are considered to be one of the favorites per 247 and in a couple of recruiting circles that I follow closely. They're listed as being warmer on him along with Houston on 247, meaning that they've differentiated themselves with the other teams that have all requested to land the services of Caleb Holt. I don't know what that means yet, but it's hard not to want to go play for Arizona seeing the way they're playing right now. Additionally, Arizona appears to be set in a battle with Illinois for a Lithuanian prospect by the name of Dovdias Buika. I apologize to him if I butchered his name, but Dovdias Buika, a 6'6" guard who's performed well for the Lithuanian national team in the U17 and U18. And Arizona, as many of you are aware, I'm not sure how many of you have followed this for the longest time under Tommy Lloyd, but you know his records when it comes to going after European prospects. But Lithuania has been particularly fruitful for Tommy Lloyd and Arizona. The Tubelis twins hail from Lithuania, Mo Krivos from Lithuania, Paulus Morauskas from St. Mary's, who committed to Tommy Lloyd at Arizona, but didn't get playing time, and now has turned into a very, very good player in the WCC for the Gales. And Tommy Lloyd landed this guy named Domantas Sabonis at Gonzaga, who also hails from Lithuania. So I bring that up to say Arizona, and namely Tommy Lloyd, has a real track record of success with European guys. They also landed Kirk Kriisa, Henry Visar, tons of other guys. You can even look on this team. You got a Dutch player in Aristode. You've got a German player in Karchenkov. Arizona's got a real shot in this one because of how well Tommy Lloyd's recruited internationally. But Illinois is also known for having success with international players, especially recently. And Illinois right now employs a team that is called the Balkan Block, or some people have called them the Balkan Five. They don't quite start all 5 players, but they have 5 players who hail from the Balkan region. And though Lithuania is not in the Balkans, for those of you who love geography and would call me out for that, I'm well aware of that. My contention would be that he can see a lot of players enjoying success with the Illini that are from Europe, and there won't be a cultural shock, and they play heavily featured basketball. Like David Mirkovic had a 20 and 20 game. The Vicic brothers are getting more prominence than they had at Arkansas or Kentucky for Zvonimir, and for Tomislav, he's playing a ton just like he did last year. And then the fellow Lithuanian went number 18 in the draft. That was Kaspars Jakučionis a season ago. I'm not saying he's as good as Kaspars Jakučionis, nor any of these guys. I don't have that much of information about him, but I don't think Tommy Lloyd's success with Arizona and Gonzaga recruiting Europeans is going to drastically outweigh the success for Brad Underwood recently, featuring so many players from the Balkans or in Europe in general. The game is evolving, and Underwood has made it his priority to evolve into Europe and get guys there who play the right way and shoot the ball very well. But the interesting part about that is he's still playing a point guard that you guys are very familiar with, and Kylan Boswell, as well as a guard he recruited from Kansas by the name of Keaton Wagler. And so there's a good mix. There's going to be players that are in place of Buika at either place, Arizona or Illinois. I'll be very curious to see what happens. Buika averaged, for those of you who are curious about his game and not just where he could go, he averaged 14.3 points, 4.8 rebounds, 4.8 assists per game at the U17s for Lithuania. And in the U18 level, he scored 12 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. So he filled up the stat sheet in both levels. And he just finished a visit with Arizona. And Illinois, I believe he watched Arizona beat Auburn this weekend. And the weekend prior, he watched Illinois, and he finished his visit there November 30th, per some digging I have done. Anyway, that is on the grid. That is on the hardwood. And now let's turn to the gridiron. Here are 2 updates, one with recruiting and one with announcing, because I love broadcasting. Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt are on the call for the duel with SMU on January 2nd in San Diego. Great broadcasting crew. Could be some super memorable calls for what we hope is an Arizona victory. As for recruiting, the biggest thing I think Arizona has to recruit, and I think Brett Rennan has been pretty clear about this, is retention. He wants to keep his team, and it's a new age to where you have to do so. And when I say team, it doesn't only include the players he wants to keep before entering the portal, because some will leave, and he's going to get some, he's going to lose some. But what he's trying to do is retain his excellent coordinators that helped him turn this season around from what was a 4-3 start to finishing 9-3 with a chance to win a 10th game. And he spoke openly about retaining his coordinators and how that helps retain players. Now let's turn to the actual recruiting side of things, especially of prospects. Arizona has 6 4-stars signed, and that comprises the 35th ranked class per the 247 composite ranking. That's very, very good. It's one of the better ones in the Big 12. And they've signed over 20 letter of intents. They're also considered to be favorites for landing a Hawaiian defensive lineman by the name of EJ Tepeni. And that is, with a lot of letters of intents already signed, when you're in the mix for another guy, one of the few that is uncommitted, it always matters. So you're going to have to leave some spots open for the transfer portal. You're going to lose some people via the transfer portal. But Arizona, both on the hardwood and the gridiron, sit in fantastic spots. And the recruiting budget, but also success shared on both the hardwood and the gridiron, I think really bodes well for the future of Arizona sports. And I think the investment put in by the boosters is starting to really pick up, seeing the success. And that's why a number 1 in the AP poll matters. That's why number 17 in the college football playoff and potentially a 10-win season really matters. It's the optics of it. And it's fun to see as well. So hopefully that all happens. And thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Wildcats. Tomorrow we're going to continue to talk about the Big 12, the Big 12, of course, but the Big Top 12 clash between Arizona and Alabama to begin the show. And then I think we're going to get into some nitty gritty about the Holiday Bowl. But make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Wildcats so you get all the latest episodes. I really appreciate it. And if you want to connect with me, I'm easy. My Twitter's my name, Leif Thulin, with the L and the T respectively capitalized. And if I've got a question for you guys, did Locked On Wildcats make your Spotify Wrapped? And if you can prove it on social media, you can secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. So just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform, and we'll drop you a code, and you can be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the Everydayers Only Discord channel. And I'll be interacting with you guys right there. So for those of you who we send to the very first 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel on audio, make sure you make your second listen that for Locked On College Football. You'll get as informed as you can be for all the bowl games, the college football playoff. And thank you once again for making your first show Locked On Wildcats.